Welcome to the Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes, joined by our colleague Amanda Carpenter on I lost track of days. It's been like 150 days since the election. So is it like Thursday? Is that right, Amanda?
Blur's Day.
It is something. You know what? I woke up this morning thinking, when are we going to get normal life back? When is it going to get? When is it? Are we going to be able to sort of take a deep breath and like, hey, this is what America used to be like? That's never going to happen, is it?
When coronavirus is over.
Well, see, that's
I really hate to say that.
No, I don't even know if that's the case, whether it's the coronavirus or whether or not somebody you just for listeners, Amanda does something interesting. She puts out a tweet saying, hey, she's going on the podcast and what do people want to talk about? I don't know if you saw one of the emails we got from somebody who said, hey, can't wait to hear Amanda on the podcast today. Questions I had. I know it's crazy, but long-term, are the culture wars over now? Are Trump and the QAnoners the last embers of that era? I don't know.
I have bad news for our reader. No, the culture wars aren't over. The culture wars are fundamental to politics. This isn't a Trump thing, right? Yeah. People want to think politics is only about policy and the legislation that we pass. But the big part of politics, our elections, are about who we pick to represent us. Okay? Yeah. There are people in Georgia that picked Marjorie Taylor Greene to represent them. There are Republicans in South Florida that picked Laura Loomer to represent them, although she didn't win her general election. That's what a major part of politics is about. Only when you get past that do you get to talk about the policy and the legislation. And so, no, the culture wars are not over. They will never be over. Pick the culture issue you care about and want to engage in and do that passionately so that this vacuum isn't filled with conspiracy theory nonsense. That would be my advice.
So I want to connect the dots between that and the coronavirus, because you're absolutely right. I've said this over and over again. I look at Donald Trump and I think, Donald Trump is being Donald Trump. He's living his life. He's a pretend billionaire who gets to fly around on Air Force One and do stuff. What has been more shocking has been watching the spread of the contagion among the people that put him in office, and it really the last 4 years has been like watching this spreading disease throughout the electorate, throughout the culture. And that doesn't change when you change the people that they elect. There's a reason why you have these QAnon representatives who are now going to Congress. They didn't will that themselves. It's something that's out there. It's getting worse. Okay, so we have a lot of fun things to talk about today, including Donald Trump apparently talking about running in 2024, what that means. We're also getting an indication of his next media grift, which is amazing. I want to talk about the Georgia special election. But there's something that I haven't really done much on the podcast, and I just want to remind people that you can sign up for Bulwark Plus. This podcast remains free. Our main site remains free, but we have been expanding. We've been growing. Yes, the election's over. Obviously, the fight goes on. Obviously, there's no finish line in life or in politics here. Well, there's a finish line in life, but we're not going to go right there. And Bulwark Plus is a chance to be part of this community, to join with us. We have had a number of live streams on election night and after the debate, which I would strongly recommend. They were not only fun, they were informative, and they were cathartic for those that were part of them and for our listeners. So for the very, very low price of $10 a month, you can have access to that. You can have access to my morning newsletter, Morning Shots. JVL has a newsletter, The Triad. There are a number of new podcasts, including The Next Level and The Secret Podcast. So if you have not yet signed up for Bulwark Plus, please consider doing that. We don't have ads. We don't have a billionaire philanthropist who is funding us. We don't want to We don't want to have pop-ups, but we want to continue this. And we have been, I have to tell you, I think we've been punching way above our weight for the last couple of years. We've done it with a very, very small staff, very, very committed group of people. We're incredibly proud of the people that have followed us, that listen to us, that read us, and we want to be able to continue to do that going forward. So if you have not yet signed up for Bulwark Plus, I would strongly consider it. And now here's Amanda Carpenter with her pitch.
Was that a Flo Rida shout out and the low, 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 low price? I heard that in my mind when you said it like that.
I actually know that song, believe it or not. But it's been a long time.
What's your favorite lyric of it?
That's pretty much it. I'm not going to go deep into Flo Rida.
Boots with the fur or
yeah,
baggy sweatpants with the Reeboks with the straps. That's all I got.
So if you sign up for Bulwark Plus, you that will probably be the last reference to Flo Rida, I'm thinking. I'm just, but it is ride or die at this point. No, actually not. Okay, so I was thinking this morning, okay, should we get to the 2024 or should we save that because it's too good? I started my newsletter today by quoting George Orwell. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever, and then immediately followed that with a report from Reuters. A source familiar with the internal discussion said Trump was telling allies he planned to run for president in 2024 and could announce it by the end of the year. So Amanda Carpenter, Donald Trump is forever. If people thought you were going to have an exorcism, we may have to deal with him for another 8 years.
Of course we are. I'm afraid to even talk about it because at this point, I don't know if we're predicting or just giving him ideas. Because we've always said, of course, he's going to launch some kind of media network. Of course, he's going to keep control of the Republican Party. Of course, all these things are going. He's going to try to find a way to monetize his time in the presidency. And so that time is now. And I predict/expect his concession speech to be an announcement of his super PAC /media venture /2024 exploratory committee, right? Like that's the way out where he gets to claim victory simultaneously.
But
that
without
would be
actually concession. Yeah.
Without actually conceding, just seamlessly moving to the next thing while everybody is just standing there agog. Oh, why didn't you say you were wrong? Why didn't you admit defeat? That's never gonna happen. So just it's over. Biden's coming in. Let him say what he's gonna say and convince, the next people to take his con because they're already standing in line. That's happening.
Well, see that's in some ways that's the good news. The good news is that he will never actually concede. But when he announces he's running in 2024 and announcing his next deal, that is the moral equivalent of a concession. It means he knows it means he knows that he's going to have to pack his bags and move out on January 20th. At least we know that. Yes,
he's leaving the White House and he's moving on to the next thing. That's probably as much as of a concession that you will ever get. And already, Kayleigh McEnany's on Fox News saying he will be in control of the Republican Party for decades.
That he will be the teacher. Decades. Now, maybe this is
those COVID drugs must be good.
Well, or this is the way they figure you talk him out. You talk him out of come on, you can claim victory. It'll be fantastic. It'll be great. It is interesting watching the what's fleeing the sinking ship over the last 24 hours. You have Hugh Hewitt referring to Joe Biden as the president-elect. Karl Rove is saying that it's over, it's done. Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review, boldly writes in Politico that all of these plans are, crazy and nuts. The plan for the Electoral College, Hail Mary, is actually insane, which I'm going to be interested to know whether he actually tells the readers of National Review what he told the readers of Politico. But there does seem to be, kind of a move to like, Mr. President, just move out. But, if he announces for 2024, a couple things happen, right? Number one, he freezes the Republican field for at least a couple of years, right? I mean, if you're Mike Pence, you are effed.
Oh, yeah. But this is how where's CPAC going to be next year? It's not CPAC anymore. It's going to be TPAC at Mar-a-Lago. And every 2024 candidate is going to have to come up with big sponsorship fees to get a speaking slot. This is so programmable and so obvious what's going to happen ahead. He's not going to let go of this thing. And then they're all going to come to his hotel. And part of the continuing loyalty test for the grassroots Republican base as cultivated by a guy like Matt Schlapp, of all people, is going to be, are you a member of the Trump Club? Literally. Are you a card-carrying member of Club Trump?
That is interesting. That CPAC at Mar-a-Lago. Boy, I can really see that. So he freezes the Republican field. The Republicans cannot move on. They still have the cloud of Trump. And from Biden's point of view, also it's kind of a nice foil, right? I mean, you get to continue to say It's either me or it's this guy. So here's my question, because you're right about this, about the schlappification of CPAC and of the conservative movement. You have to pass the litmus test, right? You have to have the "I am a Trump fluffer" card in your wallet, right? So here's my question, Amanda. I think a lot of Republicans are sitting back going, okay, you know what? We're going to humor the guy. We're not going to acknowledge Biden. We're going to play along. We don't want to hurt Donald Trump's feelings, but there'll be some point where we'll acknowledge reality. I'm wondering whether they really thought this through, because what point is that going to be? Okay, is it going to be when the unofficial vote count finishes? No. When enough states officially certify their results, when the court challenges are exhausted? Is it going to be December 14th when they actually cast the electoral votes? Now, here's the problem, and I want to talk about Georgia, because one of the reasons that we hear from Republicans why they're going along with some of this delusional bullshit from Donald Trump is because they want the Trump voters in Georgia for these two big seats. That election's not till January 5th. So my question is, do they have to hang tough, and have the orange salute up to January 5th in order to keep the schlappified orange fluffer card?
We got to talk about the fluffer thing. Does that word mean exactly what I think it means? Is there a better meaning?
No.
Okay, just making sure. I hope there's not a card for that. That'd be weird. There's
definitely a card.
The Georgia race, yes. Here's the thing about Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Do you know what David Perdue looks like? Like, if you had to pick him out of a lineup, would you be able to identify his voice? I mean, do you actually know who he is?
No, not until about 10 minutes ago when I was reading some stuff out of Georgia newspapers when I was doing some prep. But no, before that, no.
Probably about as familiar as most Georgia Republicans are with David Perdue. He won his Senate race in 2014 in a relatively low turnout election when a guy like Cory Gardner came in, who also got swept out. Loeffler, as we all know, was appointed by Brian Kemp this year. These are senators that I don't believe have a real relationship with the Georgia grassroots movement like Trump did. They don't have that connection, right? So they basically only have Trump's coattails to coast on.
Right.
They don't have an identity outside of Trump. And neither of them have developed a political identity independent of Trump in a way that, say, like maybe Susan Collins did.
So this is why they have to be so Trumpified. This is why they have to be Trumpier than Trump right now.
Yeah. The Titanic is going down, but they have to cling to a lifeboat for all it's worth, because otherwise they have no chance.
That's interesting. So, but this is my question, is that election is not till January 5th. And if the whole point of some of this gaslighting that's going on right now is to keep Trump voters aligned with them in Georgia, what happens if Mitch McConnell announces on December 14th, okay, we have the Electoral College has voted, Donald Trump has been defeated, Joe Biden's the president-elect? I mean, are they going to go on the cuck list? I mean, will that be? I mean, on One America Now.
For that too?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're already seeing this sort of bifurcation where Fox is now this radical left. Believe it or not, there are people who believe that Fox News is now radical left because they have not been loyal enough to the Orange God King. So, is there going to be the "you bailed on the president when he needed you most" in late December? Are we still going to have that kind of stuff going on?
Well, I think this gets back to the first half of your question about what is the timeline for accepting the results of the election.
Yeah.
If you watch somebody like Mitch McConnell, who is always so careful with his words, he is essentially just saying, well, technically Biden isn't president-elect until the states certify the election, right? So they're trying to let Trump exhaust all his options and figure out his own exit strategy, because they don't have one for him. And so Perdue and Loeffler are just going to go along with whatever story Trump decides to tell voters will be the story they tell. They're not going to come up with a narrative and explanation of their own, because they are hostage to Trump's base. They can't move. They can't do anything but follow Trump's lead, because that's what they've done their entire time in the Senate.
You know that the one thing Republicans should not want, of course, is this to be a referendum on whether or not Trump won the election, or whether or not there was some attempt to overturn the election. they needed to be a referendum on, we need to stop Joe Biden and his left-wing socialist agenda, right? I mean, that's obviously what they want to turn it into, and who knows. Look, I mean, I think they still have an advantage in Georgia because it's a special election. The turnout among Democratic constituencies tends to go down. Unfortunately, some of the Democratic candidates have been a little bit squishy on the issue of defunding police. This is why Jim Clyburn is out there, rattling the cages, saying, hey, Democrats, you're not going to win in places like South Carolina and Georgia if you don't make it clear that you're not defunding the police and you're not part of all of that. So there are those issues out there.
One point on that. What Loeffler is doing to Warnock, they're essentially trying to Reverend Jeremiah Wright him. You guys all remember Obama's pastor, chickens are coming home to roost, all that stuff. They are trying to put that imprint right on top of him. And, that might be successful, or it might galvanize the, black base that is made Georgia a swing state. So I think it is a risky strategy, but the more interesting element of that race is how future 2024 candidates are using Georgia as a training ground right now. Marco Rubio's been there. Tom Cotton's been there. I would expect other people to find their way there. I think maybe Nikki Haley's been there, although I can't quite be sure. They need to go there and start testing out messages while campaigning on behalf of Purdue and Loeffler. And I would expect to see a lot more of that in the coming weeks. Okay,
so before we get too far ahead, and there are reasons to be alarmed about some of the things the president is doing. We've talked about this, but as we're looking around the country today, Thursday morning, one thing seems overwhelmingly obvious, that Joe Biden has won this election. He's won it rather decisively. There are no states in which there's any chance that a recount is going to overturn the results. The lawsuits that have been filed many of them are being exposed as completely bogus. And even with all the lawsuits, if you tally them up, they don't come close to overturning the result of the Electoral Council. This is definitely not going to happen. However, there are a remarkable number of people out there who consume conservative media who are under the impression that this thing, might just happen. And, there are the suggestions of fraud, or the suggestions of somehow, things that were done wrong. I mean, this really is what you wrote about. You wrote the book about gaslighting America. And I do feel that that's what's going on. That, I think Donald Trump himself knows that this is bogus, that it's not going to happen, but he feels that he needs to go through this performance art of gaslighting to convince people that he fights. I mean, that's what's going on, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's always had this narrative that if he was going to lose an election, it would be rigged against him. I mean, it's incredible how upfront he is about the ruse that he's pulling.
He's very transparent.
Yeah, extremely. What I talk about in this gaslighting, these steps that he cycles through, there's always the element of creating suspense. And you see his people doing this all the time. Oh, wait till tomorrow. We're going to unveil these affidavits tomorrow. You won't believe what's coming. And people just eat this up. It's so incredibly predictable. But yes, this is his way out. And it will always be a wink and a nod the rest of his life about how the election was stolen from him or rigged, whatever watchword he wants to insert in there. We are going to be debating this for the rest of our lives, most likely. So go ahead, memorize all the facts of the case about how the election results were valid. There weren't enough disputed ballots to overturn the election anyway. Most of the complaints were meritless and amounted to just complaints about how somebody was maybe being mean to me. So just get all that locked down in your brain, because you're going to need it for the rest of your life in explaining the outcome of this election.
So I know you've done this over and over and over, but explain what you mean by gaslighting, because you actually do have you have a structure that you put all of this in to help us understand what he's doing. So what is gaslighting?
People overuse the word gaslighting to say someone is lying.
Yeah.
It's not just lying. It's creating a whole alternative reality to make your opponents live in. Mm-hmm. And the point of it is to either make them go crazy and humiliate themselves, or just surrender to whatever lie you're pushing, right? Like, it is a very aggressive form of manipulation, and you have to be utterly shameless to pull it off, which is why Donald Trump is perfect at it. And he's been doing it, since his tabloid days. And the best way to understand how this works is birtherism. That was the greatest gaslighting that he's ever pulled off, and it has been the template for his campaign against the deep state, for this rigged election nonsense. And here's how it works. The first part of it is that you have to realize that there's a narrative out there that a lot of people are interested in, and you have to be shameless enough to claim it. I call this staking a claim. Step one. Donald Trump did not come up with birtherism. Donald Trump didn't come up with the concept of dead people voting for Democrats. That's all been out there. But he said, you know what? I'm going to start dabbling in this. I'm going to own this. And he started doing that, I think, 2012, saying, I don't know about Obama. Other people are saying he might not be a citizen. I've heard things. And that's step two. For the first step is identifying what the weird thing is you're going to push that has a lot of potential value. The second step is dipping your toe in it, but not taking responsibility. I call this advance and deny. And the way you recognize this, and when he says other people are saying, when he retweets some random person on the internet nobody's heard of and saying, somebody should look into this. Like, he's not really taking ownership of it, but he's using his platform to push it into the mainstream. Okay. And then other people start asking about him. And then other media people say, oh, can you believe what Donald Trump is saying? And he knows this is how he starts to control the media narrative. Okay. The third step is create suspense, which you can stay in this step for weeks, years, as he did with birtherism. So he dipped his toe into it. And what did he do when he finally started to get caught? He said, well, you know what? I'm going to send investigators to Hawaii. I have very good people. You're going to be shocked at what they find. I'll deliver the report in 2 weeks, right? We've seen this happen again and again. That's creating suspense. He promises something is coming and keeps people on the hook. And while he's buying time for that, he just starts attacking the opponent. That's step 4, discrediting the opponent. Obama's work, just going to town with whoever wants to fight him. That's another way that you dominate the media. And then when you finally run out of runway, when you can't take it anymore, like he did in his presidential campaign, and President Obama unveiled his birth certificate and he couldn't lie about it anymore, he holds a press conference. And what did he do? He claimed victory. He said he won. He said he finally settled the matter and that everybody should thank him for bringing this to an end. He claims victory no matter what. And so you can put that template on any one of his big cons, and you'll know what's going to happen next.
So you wrote this back in, say, it was published in 2018 in your book, Gaslight America.
Yeah. I started writing this during the Democratic convention in 2016. Okay, so that's but nobody wanted it because everybody thought he was going to lose, because I was like, this is what he does. This is how he's going to burn up the Republican Party. And so nobody was interested in it. And then somebody came back around, I think a year and a half later. And I was like, yes, I can still write this because he's going to do it throughout his presidency.
and that explains it. So, I was thinking about that because there were so many of the things that have happened that were predictable, that if you understood how his mind worked and what his character was, and yet it feels now that it turned out to be even worse than we thought. So when you were writing about the gaslighting of America, well, let me ask you that question. Did it turn out the way you thought? Did it turn out not as bad as you thought? Did it turn out much worse than you thought?
Not as bad as I thought. Oh. It's pretty bad. I thought there was going to be more stuff like he did with Ukraine. I mean, I thought he was going to do more of what he got impeached for.
Yeah.
I still don't think we've seen the end of that, Charlie. I mean, everybody's asking, why is Mark Esper gone? Why is he replacing senior military officials? Why are they talking about getting rid of CIA Director Gina Haspel and FBI Director Chris Wray? I think it's because he wants to find stuff to politicize later and use against his enemies. I don't know that.
You mean he's putting his people in so that they can dig up the stuff that he can use because they've blocked him from access to things? I mean, is that?
What you've seen throughout his presidency is that they have politicized intelligence. right? They've held briefings to try to sway things one way. Devin Nunes is the epitome of that. Now, Devin Nunes' guy is at the Pentagon. What do you think they're doing? I don't think they're trying to start a war. I don't think they're actually trying to rush home troops from Afghanistan. I think they're mining for dirt, like they always have done, in a way that might be payback for the impeachment that he went through that they still claim was unjustified. That's just what I would
the next
expect
term,
these loyalists to be doing.
So the 2024 term could be really lit if he comes back and he wins. Does a Grover Cleveland. I started floating this idea months ago that, the president, Trump can run again in 2024. And even to me, it sounded a little bit far-fetched. But that's the other thing about the Trump years, that the way in which something goes from absolutely unthinkable to, yeah, that's possible, to Republican orthodoxy. I mean, that's the weird thing. So
I do think it's more, I do think we need to sound a note of warning. Joe Biden's governing coalition is pretty fragile. He didn't get the huge mandate landslide that we expect. He did pretty good, but there's still a deep, deep, deep mistrust that many Republican voters have of Democrats. Yeah. And we can trace it to the defund the police calls, to trying to make socialism cool. We can talk about all that. It exists. Joe Biden, if he runs for re-election, it's not going to be a gimme. It'll be harder than it was in 20. Yeah, exactly.
No, you're right. I mean, look, I think it is an impressive coalition. I think that as we get more numbers in, the decisiveness of his victory is impressive. I think he's going to win by, 7 million votes possibly when all is said and done. But you're right, the coalition is not what some people were hoping. And again, this is one of those moments where, the Democrats need to think about the story they have been telling themselves, where they believe that, demographics was going to make them inevitably dominant. Maybe not. Also, they've been talking to one another and going, hey, what's wrong with socialism? And really, all this talk about defunding police didn't really hurt us that much. Maybe it did. I was struck by the number of people who cited things like political correctness, that they wanted to vote against political correctness as the reason to vote for Donald Trump. Now, I actually don't think that works out that way. I don't think that was a good choice, but it's a reality. It is a political reality. And I'm not sure that the Democrats have fully understand the degree to which they have also created a bubble for themselves, which makes them not quite get the damage they do to themselves out in the country.
I pray they listen to the Midwest Democrats. When I see what people like Elise Slotkin from Michigan are saying, Pete Buttigieg, who is the best messenger they have right now, the best messenger, you should listen to him. And they should listen to how Joe Biden won the election. He won the election. I don't understand why they're not more eager to follow his playbook, because that's the way he won. Listen to his messaging. And it's like they have earplugs in their ears.
Well, you've just named a couple of names. I mean, Claire McCaskill, of course, was defeated in Missouri, but she understands this dynamic, and I think she, as a common sense Democrat. Pete Buttigieg, absolutely no question about it. Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania, Abigail Spanberger, people ought to listen to them. Joe Manchin seemed rather cranked up as well. Now, again, he's from West Virginia, so but he basically said, don't defund the police, defund my butt. I'm not sure why he wanted to focus attention on his butt,
please,
or what that.
Nobody's funding your butt.
I certainly hope not. Okay, so speaking of grifts and what happens next, I'm interested in getting your take on this. Axios has this really interesting report, which seems completely plausible. I don't know. I can't confirm it one way or another, that Trump's plan is he's really ticked off and he wants to go to war with Fox News. He wants to destroy Fox News. Excuse me while I run and get some popcorn.
Let them fight.
Let them fight.
Let them fight.
So this is from Axios. There's been lots of speculation about Trump starting a cable channel, but getting carried on cable systems would be expensive and time-consuming. Instead, Trump is considering a digital media channel that would stream online, which would be cheaper and quicker to start. Trump's digital offering would likely charge a monthly fee to MAGA fans. Oh, he's going to milk the forgotten people. Many are Fox News viewers, and he'd aim to replace the network and the $5.99 a month of the Fox Nation streaming service as their top destination. And obviously, he would rely on his massive database of email and cell phone contacts to get this going. I know the JVL has been writing about this. This seems plausible to me, although I do think it's interesting how you're starting to see the Newsmaxes and the One America Nows out there trying to fill the space of, even crazier than Fox News, and then he would have his own little network here. So,
I mean, the most predictable thing is that he's not actually going to start a new digital network. He is going to license his name to Newsmax or OAN somehow, right? That is the purely Trumpian way, because he's not actually going to run a media network. He's not Roger Ailes, okay? There's a lot of work that goes into actually bringing programs to air. I don't think he's interested in that. I think he wants to dictate what the message is, pick the talent based on how glowing they will be of him at all times, and just repeat what he says. Like, he wants a million little press secretaries on OAN, all competing for his affection and praise, and that'll be it. And he can probably do some business like that. I mean, 71 million people voted for him. Sure. It's totally doable. But what does that do to Fox News, right? Like, the lesson here is that you can never be Trumpy enough. Fox News has a whole primetime lineup that does nothing but lavish praise and present Trump in the best possible light. And it's still not good enough. And so this is like the lesson that should be for everybody that's trying to parse this and say, okay, well, let's take the good parts of Trump and separate it from, bad tweets. You can't. There's no separating it. Once you decide to start compromising on Trump, you are done. He owns you. You're never getting away. And these people, these primetime hosts, all these people that worked in his press shop, they're never getting away from him. Welcome to the rest of your life, putting out press releases in one way or another, talking about how awesome Donald Trump is. Congratulations.
But in terms of like whether things turned out the way we thought or better or worse, this fracturing and this centrifugal force in the media on the right, I think means that everything that's been happening that we think of as bad is going to get worse, because there's going to be this incredible pull to be nuttier and crazier, to go further and further into the fever swamps. And there's going to be this race. I mean, you turn on, I was looking at somebody's account of the host that was sitting in for Rush Limbaugh yesterday. Rush Limbaugh today sounds like what Alex Jones sounded like 4 years ago. Alex Jones sounds like what some, crazy guy writing letters with crayons sounded 4 years before that. So, I mean, there is a movement, and it's not positive. So for the guy that wrote, "Hey, are the culture wars over?" Oh, you haven't seen anything yet.
No, because the culture wars are politics.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are, but this MAGA story, I think, is just fascinating. Now, this is all in the context, and it's not funny at all. This nightmare scenario, the coronavirus, is on us right now. I mean, I remember, boy, it was a few months ago. I'd like to go back when Anthony Fauci was saying something like, we need to get the daily case number down to like 7,000 if we're going to avoid a disaster. Yesterday, it's 144,000. And you have at least 9 states that have record numbers of cases. Wisconsin is continuing to spike. The death toll is accelerating. And the COVID-19 patients in ICUs, the total is now 12,518, which is the highest since May 5th. We're running out of hospital beds. And yet, you look at Washington, D.C., and as far as I can tell, they're not doing anything. So I got asked a question yesterday, which I think I fumbled. Chuck Todd said, why are Republicans in Congress willing to ignore the fact that the Trump administration is ignoring the coronavirus? And I don't think I came up with a good answer, but I think I have an answer now. Why do you think? You would think that right now would be a moment where people think, this is really bad. Let's get something done during this interregnum period. Why are Republicans doing absolutely nothing?
You want to hear my very cynical take?
I do. It's probably similar to mine, but go ahead.
They don't care if Joe Biden walks into a mess.
Yeah.
Let him own it. I hate to say that. But Charlie, we've watched Washington. If they wanted to have a big spending bill, lame duck is the perfect time for that. They're not going to do it. They're just going to let the virus do what the virus does. Let Trump do what he does for the rest of the year. And when Joe Biden comes in, they'll let him own it. And that makes me sick. But the bright side, I think Joe Biden is prepared to own it. People have been asking, well, what will Joe Biden do in the first 100 days? Will there be the infrastructure bill? What can Republicans do to work with him on tax credits and criminal justice reform? Just shut up. None of that is going to happen. Nothing. If Joe Biden does this right, nothing should happen until coronavirus is contained. The end. We get nothing back. If he does the first 3 months right, gets some relief out, gets the doctors going, gets a couple states on the right page that are willing to go, and rights this ship, the rest of his presidency will have much smoother sailing. But you have to do that first. Nothing happens. And the Republicans in the Senate are just going to sit back and take pot shots at him along the way, questioning masking, questioning lockdowns. And I believe the Biden people know this, and they're prepared to own it. And so that is what the first few months will be like.
Well, I think you're right, but let me just put a little bit of gloss on that. Yes, they don't care that Joe Biden is going to inherit the mess, so they're going to let it happen. But also, they're not going to be voting on this massive spending bill because instantaneously they are all going to become fiscal conservatives again. Yeah. Magically on January 20th, this pivot will be something just awesome to behold. The same folks that have been okay with the $3 trillion deficit, the massive increase in the debt, will suddenly come back to Jesus. And it will be a moving experience how all the Republicans will become fiscal conservatives, deeply concerned about deficit spending, deeply concerned about the debt. So that's part of it. But also hoping that people's memories flip so that the same people that were completely okay with Donald Trump's, hey, the coronavirus is solved, it's no big deal, we can't panic, we can't let it control our lives, watch how suddenly they see it as an existential crisis, and it's all Joe Biden's fault. But you mentioned how they're going to take pot shots at the masking thing. I have to say that one of the things that I'm kind of dreading is the tribalization of the issue of vaccines. Because the one glimmer of hope that we have is that Pfizer or somebody else will come up with a vaccine that successfully controls this, but half the country decides that they are, they're not going to go along with it. We know that there's an anti-vaxxer movement out there. And going back to your template of gaslighting, you don't have to invent anti-vax feeling. You just simply need to sort of co-opt it and plug and play for some opposition to whatever good things are happening during a Biden presidency.
Yeah, the thing about this one is going to be fought on the front lines by states and localities, probably more than Joe Biden is able to. When the vaccine is available, our school administrator is going to make that a condition upon returning to school. I mean, if you know how local politics and school politics can play out, it can be vicious. And so I'm not worried about what Joe Biden or Trump will do. I'm very worried about these frontline teachers, school board members, and people like that who will have to fight that culture war one county at a time.
Well, that's why I'm thinking about the rallies and about the grievance movement that Donald Trump will want to encourage. And the template would be the Tea Party that we saw rise up in the first year of the Obama presidency. I can see a Trump party with mass rallies. focusing on the masks and everything. Oh, I have something here in front of me that I was thinking of writing about. Do you know the Heartland Institute based in Chicago?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So
they do education stuff.
Well, they are a sort of libertarian, very obsessed with opposition to doing anything about climate change. I think they used to be more mainstream, but they've gone the way a lot of other conservative organizations. I got their quarterly performance report, in the mail, because I'm still on the mailing list. I'm still on some really weird ass mailing lists, so I'll tell you that.
You can never get off those weird ass.
Yeah, I will be on these mailing lists forever. But I love this one. The cover of this is, them standing there, the Heartland Institute, taking the fight to the socialists and the climate left. It's got a picture of them looking like Superman, and then you have this shadowy figure of this robot, which would of course be the climate left, with a hammer and sickle on it, because of course they're all communists. But let me just read you the first paragraph, which I think is fantastic. Fantastic, I mean in a awful way. This is the cover of this publication. Sadly, 2020 will go down in history as a year of unprecedented assaults on human freedom. Period. Okay, let's just stop right there. 2020. Unprecedented assaults. This was the worst year. I mean, forget slavery. I mean, forget the Holocaust. I mean, forget tyranny, forget Pol Pot, forget any of that stuff. Forget fascism. I mean, this unprecedented, something we've never seen before in all of human history. You realize this? I mean, human history is pretty long and it's pretty ugly. And generally, there have been a lot of assaults on human freedom, but 2020 will go down in history as a year of unprecedented assaults in human freedom. Well, what is he talking about here? I mean, which gulags, which camps? No. Americans suffered under government-mandated economic shutdowns, enforced social distancing, face mask requirements, and a Democratic Party that has become increasingly socialistic. That is the unprecedented assault on human freedom, mask mandates.
Which aren't even mandates. Has anybody actually ever been arrested or gone to jail for not wearing a mask? Every time I am so Target, there's always a random middle-aged to retired dude not wearing a mask, coughing in the corner.
Yeah. Always. Basically, the unprecedented assault on human freedom has been YouTube videos of random Karens screaming about mask mandates in Walmart. I mean, are you kidding me? This is the kind of shit we're up against. And you know that all of that's going to be ramped up when Biden comes in if he tries to do anything about all of this. You'll notice that the word pandemic, coronavirus, COVID does not appear there at all whatsoever. Just sort of randomly, government decided to do terrible thing. Imagine that you had government encouraging social distancing at a time when 250,000 Americans are dying. So you can only imagine how they're going to portray whatever Joe Biden does in the next year.
This has long been a feature, this apocalyptic doomsday. This is the most important election. We're going to lose our country. Has that always been in conservative politics? I remember it getting bad through the Tea Party time and sort of hearing people say it really, do you mean that? Okay, you're just going to say that. But has that strain always been there? This is the worst time ever. Vote for me.
Yeah, it has, but it seems much worse. 2016 became the Flight 93 election, which is that we're all going to die, so let's storm the cockpit. And that's been internalized. And I think that's part of it, which also explains this hysteria. Because, okay, so if you are a conservative Republican, should you be freaking out right now? I mean, you have some friends still, right? I mean, among the, you would think the conservative Republicans would go, this isn't so bad. We still probably are going to control the Senate. We have a majority on the Supreme Court. We would be able to block any crazy stuff that Joe Biden would want to do. So we don't have to worry about America becoming a socialist nation. So we're actually in pretty good shape in the midterm elections. Possible Republicans are going to take control of the House. And now we don't have to defend Donald Trump's tweets. You would think that they would be a little bit more chill as opposed to, oh, my God, we need to have the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania declare the election null and void and name electors. I mean, what?
But I think this gets back to the political class, as you point out, is doing fine, right? Like Republican senators can safely oppose lockdowns because they are protected from the consequences of it, but their voters are not. And what I have in my head right now is, I don't know if you listen to the Daily podcast, but a few days ago,
The New York Times Daily?
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
They were talking to a woman and asking her why she thought the election was rigged. And she kind of starts off with standard MAGA stuff. They're not counting it. And then she kind of descends into despair, saying, my daughter's at home. She's in high school. She can't go to high school. She used to be social. Now she doesn't want to leave her room. She doesn't want to go to college. And you know what? Maybe she shouldn't. I've got hundreds of thousands of debt and my business has been shut down because of the pandemic. And it just like goes down and down. And you can see this woman is on the edge.
Yes, despair.
Right. But this is why the conspiracy theories and all this stuff works, because they need an enemy. They need someone. There's a lot of people in really bad situations in America. It's not the political class. It is not them. But they have to somehow reflect and redirect this rage that exists when people really are struggling. And I don't think they have the right solutions. I don't think super spreader rallies are the answer at all.
Mm-hmm.
But people are feeling loss and they want an explanation. And Donald Trump and these other people that give fan service to Trump give them an explanation, as fraudulent or wrong as it may be. And Democrats have to realize they have to compete in that storytelling element in a way that gives them hope and puts them on a better path, because that is what leadership is about. That is the culture where they have to play.
No, that is, you're absolutely right. And one of the stories that Trump and Trump world has successfully been able to tell is that I'm on your side because the other side hates you. They think you're racist and bigots and dumb. And that's what Democrats think of you, and that is what the media thinks of you. And I'm going to tell you that I'm on your side. There's much
Isn't
more
there
power.
such a loneliness in that message?
Yeah, but it's
saying, I'll be your friend.
Yes, it is very powerful. And also what it means is that he deflects the criticism against him, because I do think that most of the real dislike and distrust is to Donald Trump, but he deflects it and say, when they attack me, they're attacking you because they hate you. Now, the flip side of the message, and this is something that I think that the left has not really grasped, because there is a lot of, yes, you people are racist. This is a white supremacist country. We need to all of that stuff is read as an indictment that you think that I am a bad person. You people are terrible people. And amazingly, that does not win hearts and minds. When I think the more powerful message is, you are a good person and you are better than this. A good person does not look the other way when there are racist policies. No, you're not that person who wants to listen to those dog whistles. And that's the difference of saying, look, I know this stuff is complicated and I'm going to appeal to the better angels of your nature and ratify that when we talk about who Americans are, yeah, we have some problems. We have some issues. Nobody's perfect. But you don't want to be that person. That's a very different message than saying, America is so deeply corrupt and so deeply racist and white supremacist, and you people need to apologize. And even when you apologize, we're not going to accept that, because we don't want redemption. We want reparations. I mean, seriously, years and years and years of that have taken a huge toll.
Yeah, and I have compassion for, I'm thinking of, I don't want to say my Black friends, but people who have suffered the brunt of racism in real time, in real ways. And essentially what we're asking them to do is, don't express rage. You, as a person who has been wronged, could you explain to me in a nice way why it matters?
Yeah.
That is a really hard thing to do.
I understand
it's unfair.
that, yeah.
No, I know that's kind of what it calls for, but God, that is such a hard thing to do. And there are people who can do it. Barack Obama did it. Barack Obama did that. But coming off of Donald Trump, it takes a tremendous amount of strength to be able to contemplate doing that in the face of what, I mean, the Proud Boys, the child separation.
Oh, no. See, this is what, because I don't think, I mean, I honestly do think that the vast majority of people, including Trump voters, look at them and have this and are also repulsed. And I think it's very important to say you do not want to be like them.
Yeah.
Because there's a real disconnect between the political debates and social media. And then when you go out and you talk to people in the real world, there's always that kind of shock. Hey, people are still nice. People are still decent. People still want to be thought of as a good person. So we have a distorted view. And so this is, I think, one of the tragedies is these people who I think are good and decent people who could have gone either way. Yes. Because, I mean, things are not simple. You're not born like I'm racist and I'm anti-racist. No, I think that people are complicated, but you can bring them along and say, you know what? Let's appeal to your values where you are. You want to be treated. You want to believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you're going to be treated fairly and justly. And that's the real test. Is America moving toward justice? Is it moving toward fairness? Can we do something on a personal level? Look, I know you. I'm actually doing this. I know you, and I know that you would be horrified if you saw a child in the street who'd been separated from their parent. That would be a horrific thing. And I know that you and your neighbors would do everything possible to reunite that child, that you would not do that you would be appalled at any act of cruelty toward that child. So this is not who you are or want to support, as opposed to you people. You voted for Trump. You're all a bunch of racists and cruel. There's a difference in tone and in message there. That you follow what I'm getting at here, right? I'm not making excuses and I'm not making a defense. I'm just saying there's a very different approach to appealing to the better angel than starting off with the condemnation.
In a key part of this is making the case that Donald Trump is an outlier. We say he's not normal. He does not behave as a normal person. He does not behave as regular Republican voters do in their personal and professional lives, right? Yes. He is an outlier. He is an outlier of history when it comes to presidents. And we should look at that and say that was a time. It has passed. It is time to move on.
Okay, so Schadenfreude alert here, because we're better than this, right?
Depends how good it is.
Jim Swift is just messaging us here that Trump mega donors Dick and Liz Uline, big funders here in the Midwest, have contracted COVID-19. Oh. The prolific conservative political contributors have been outspoken opponents of COVID-19 restrictions, with Mrs. Uline arguing in the spring the media is overblowing the threat. Okay, so we have one more a clip that I want to play here that Jim Swift has pulled for us. Kayleigh McEnany. Let's have a flashback. This is Kayleigh McEnany from November 2016. This, of course, is right after Donald Trump narrowly won his election. Do we have that?
You have people out there calling for recounts that are unsubstantiated based on no evidence. You have Jill Stein coming on our network an hour or so ago suggesting that there were hacks or potentially hacks, and we won't know until we count the votes. There are people trying to delegitimize the president-elect of the United States.
That's so good. Oh, Jim, could you play it again, please? This is Kayleigh McEnany 4 years ago.
You have people out there calling for recounts that are unsubstantiated based on no evidence. You have Jill Stein coming on our network an hour or so ago suggesting that there were hacks or potentially hacks, and we won't know until we count the votes. There are people trying to delegitimize the president-elect of the United States.
So good. Now, this is gaslighting, isn't it, Amanda, that she's on now doing the exact same shit in reverse?
You know what? Kayleigh McEnany is going to get everything that she has earned and deserved. And that is going to be Donald Trump's mouthpiece for the rest of her life. It's what she wanted. You can have it.
And she's going to get it. Amanda Carpenter, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to today's Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. We will be back tomorrow, and we'll do this all over again.